The following program is brought to you in living color.
Hi, this is Jim from Trek World, and I want to give you a brief update today on where we currently stand with the lawsuit between Heritage and Dustin and Jason over the 3-foot model. Now, I was extremely vocal about this in the past year, but I've really cut down my coverage on it, not because it's not interesting. It is interesting, but we're at a specific point in this lawsuit now where it's very much a wait and see kind of thing that goes on to happen. But I wanted to give you guys some updates on things that definitely have happened since I last gave you an update. First and foremost, Eugene Rodbury has entered the lawsuit. He reached out to the LA court and he petitioned to be added as a party on the lawsuit because he has acclaimed the model. Now, what's interesting in this case is, remember, the lawsuit is about whether or not Heritage acted in bad faith against their customers when their clients gave them an object to sell. However, Eugene and his lawyers obviously believe, and probably so do Heritage, that if they can prove complete legal ownership of the model is theirs, then that might be used as a rationale for why Heritage did what they did when they were dealing with what they possibly and allegedly believed was a stolen product. So the first thing I want to remember, everybody, is because of the way the Self-Storage Act in California works, Jason and Dusty own the enterprise. Period. Now, you can take them to court, you can sue them, you can try anything you want to get that away from them, but under California law, they own the enterprise. Then that is a battle that has still yet to be fought. And I want everyone who hears this to realize that the success or failure of this lawsuit is not based on whether Dustin and Jason own the model or if they ever get it back. The lawsuit is about the breach of fiduciary responsibilities that Heritage had for Dustin and Jason. So Rodbury's entered the fray, and he has pretty much submitted everything to the courts that we've already seen before. He even trots out the Katzenberg letter again. But his take is, it's stolen property that belonged to my father. It's stolen, therefore legally it's mine. Among the evidence that he presents, though, is the Katzenberg letter. Because keep in mind, they don't have a receipt. There's no police report. There's no insurance record, okay? As crazy as it sounds, there's absolutely zero documentation ever that the model ever belonged to anybody and disappeared. The only documentation that's ever been found, period, is the letter that was found in the UCLA archives for Rodbury that said, hey, Paramount, Jeffrey Katzenberg, I loaned this model out to someone at Paramount who needed it in their visual effects department. It is cut and dried, clear. That's a statement, okay, that is being accepted by Rodbury, Heritage, and Dustin and Jason. All three parties are saying that document they have no problem with. This is going to be very, very important because what happens now is if they all want to use that in their favor, that's wonderful. But only one side of this war will be successful in using it. And quite frankly, Rodbury's case would have been a lot stronger if he disputed the Katzenberg letter, and even more stronger if the letter had never been found. And I want to call everyone's attention to the Star Wars TIE fighter that sold a little over a year ago for $3 million that Greg Jean had in his possession. No documentation to show where it came from, no sales receipt. No police report was ever filed because nobody cared it was missing. There was never insurance. It's exactly the same situation. No difference. At the end of the day, someone ended up with custody of a model without stealing it. I think that's the important thing to keep track here is Greg didn't steal that. Absolutely not. Okay? Nobody's even said he did. But the point is, the precedent is that $3 million auction item is also what Eugene and Heritage have to fight against, because it's exactly the same. As a matter of fact, there's even a discussion in the court records that occurred the day that Dustin brought the model in to Heritage Auctions, which for those of you who need to remember was November 2nd, 2023. And in that conversation, Brian Channis says, oh no, we just sold something just like this, same scenario. Somebody came in a couple months back and we sold a TIE fighter that had been missing for decades. Everybody thought it was destroyed. It was long gone, and they brought it in and man, it went for like $3 million. And there were no legal tie-ups, no claims, no nothing. So there's your precedent. That is what Dustin says he was told. We know retroactively, It was a 100% true and correct statement. Depositions have been filed. There have been statements on both sides. Now, I used to get these legal documents as soon as they came out, but quite frankly, the operating budget that I have here at Trek World doesn't really allow me to throw around too much money on stuff like that. So I haven't really bought any of that stuff in the past, like since early January, I think. But that covered all the way up through the fact that Rodbury said, I want in. The judge said, yes, you're in. And then Rodbury gave his statements and he gave his discovery paperwork to the judge. And that's all public record now out there. And so we know where everybody stands.
Do you have a message that you would like to share with us and the Star Trek universe? If so, please call our user comments line and give us your thoughts.
Here is the next key point. In August, it goes to trial, and it goes to a jury trial. So think about this. And because this is a civil trial, the jury will decide upon whether or not damages are due to Dustin and Jason. And then separately, they will determine if punitive damages are due to Dustin and Jason. Now, damages are pretty much straightforward. How much you paid, how much you lost. Punitive damages, pain and suffering. How would you like to be in Dustin and Jason's position? You buy something in good faith. You buy these things all the time. You never have a problem. You invest money in it. You think you found the $1 million McDonald's piece. And then this happens. And now 2 years later, they haven't got a dime and they don't have the model. Eugene Rodbury, according to the court records, does not have possession of the model. Heritage still has possession of the model. Heritage's response back to the court said, well, I can't give it to Eugene because Dustin and Jason never signed the paperwork to transfer that to him. And I can't give it back to them because we're tied up in this thing about whether it belongs to them. So I'm stuck in the middle holding a model that I can't give to anybody. And in Hollywood, that's a convenient place to be. And viewing the circumstances that there's at least one other lawsuit now accusing Heritage allegedly of doing the same thing to them and that particular private collector, we all know. I'm not going to go into the identities here because nobody told me not to, but hey, let's just keep it, let's respect their privacy for now. But this is a name we all know. I can tell you, and this is Jim speaking, it's not based on any legal information I've been given by the lawyers and the thing, and I have been involved in that, but this is just me speaking. If I were Heritage, I sure as heck would not want to be anywhere near a jury trial. Just go out on the internet right now and search in the forums for Heritage auctions. And you will find story after story after story of people who are extremely unhappy and have fascinating stories to tell you about why they're unhappy and what alleged damages were done to them. Up until now, not a single one of them had enough legal documentation to go to court. Now we have 2 cases in the court that can be used as precedent by the people that follow behind us. So that's where we stand. We have to wait until August before it goes to trial. They could settle beforehand. And by the way, a legitimate settlement option here for everybody involved is auction it and then divide up the proceeds any way that you would want to between the parties that is mutually agreeable to get them to accept a settlement. We all know how much this thing would go for, and that's well in excess of $3 million. And the only other thing I can put out there right now, if you are a private collector and you are in possession of a Star Trek prop, like the phaser and communicator that Julian's just auctioned about a year or so ago, you're good. You got out the door with $2 million. But there's a precedent now for the first time in history. The Roddenberry estate is claiming ownership of objects that left the Desilu Paramount premises. This has never been done with any other object, and it's possible they would never attempt to do that again, but there's no guarantees. And at the end of the day, I don't care how altruistic you are, the money numbers will change your desires and your attitudes. If there had been any chance whatsoever that people could have possibly even dreamed about how much money was raised by Julian for a phaser and a communicator, they would have filed the exact same kind of paperwork to get ownership declared that they're stolen items. And before anybody jumps back and forth and says, oh, they never do that, Jim, why wouldn't they? And then I'll say, okay, I agree with your reasons, but then why are they doing it now? The ship's not going to stay with Dustin and Jason. It's going to go to somebody who has money that's going to restore it or preserve it or keep it. The ship's going to go where all these things generally do go. So what is the purpose of intercepting the ownership of it before it gets to where it's going? Inquiring minds would like to know. Leave your comments down below. Like this video, spread it out, let people know what's going on. Because I don't do as many of these on the model again, and there's probably only 1 or 2 more coming at this rate. But at least now you are completely up to date with things that have been going on that are pertinent that the general public should know.
So now let's get up with the fun stuff, like this right over here.